Okay. VerkayRadio.com, certified #1 digital talk radio station in the world. The power of women.
Welcome to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation with Margo Lovett. Heard on VerkayRadio.com and worldwide on iHeartRadio. Women reinvented to become entrepreneurs, authors, speakers. Their second act is full of courage, full of how-tos, and inspiration. Now, let's get into the show. Here's your host, Margo Lovett.
Hello, everybody. It's Margo Lovett. I am back again with a brand new episode, Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation, as always, but extremely overjoyed today because of today's guest. She is a coach, a consultant. She has her own show, Support is Sexy, so that lets you know that she is a podcaster. She is a speaker and author, runs a mastermind, launched Girl On podcast, which we'll get into a little bit later. But if you listen to any podcast at all, I know that you've heard about Support is Sexy. It's a 5-day-a-week podcast. That is very ambitious right there. It's hosted by media veteran Elayne Fluker. Features interviews with more than 300 diverse and inspiring women entrepreneurs around the world. And these ladies candidly share the ups and the downs of their entrepreneurial journeys. And now let me tell you something about these interviews. They are captivating, and they're laced with sage advice, and they're focused on delivering strategy, and that strategy is wrapped up in storytelling. My guest, Elayne Fluker, she is a master storyteller. When she's trying to teach something or impart information, she wraps that thing up into a wonderful, intriguing story, and you are sitting on the edge of your seat, as you will, as I have the conversation with Miss Elayne Fluker. Thank you so much for being with us here today. I so appreciate it.
Margo, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that introduction. I'm going to have to steal some of that. That was good.
Well, I tell you what, you are an inspiration, and there are so many people who have had conversations with you on Support is Sexy, from Diane Valentine to Dr. Renee Matthews and Joanne Roberts and the power of reinvention. I mean, we listen to these conversations, to these interviews, and we all grow and we glean. Today, I'm going to point people over to your show so that they can grow and glean, but I want the spotlight to be on one particular episode, and you were the guest, you were the spokesperson, and you were talking about the Imposter Syndrome. So before we get into that, I forgot to tell people that you tell people over and over again that having it all does not mean doing it all alone. So to set this thing up about Imposter Syndrome, first of all, will you tell us, how did you come to know that we as women can have it all, but we don't have to do it all alone?
Yes, in 2015, I attended this personal development workshop called Momentum in New York City. They also have it in D.C. and L.A. right now, I think those 3 locations. I was invited by a friend. I went to the introduction for it. I thought it was a good idea for me because at the time I had my business, but I didn't have Support is Sexy as a business. But I had another business and was just sort of feeling alone. You know, entrepreneurship, there can be some feelings of isolation, loneliness. If you're not a person, which I wasn't, who was okay with telling people, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, how do I do this, or even knowing what questions to ask, you can end up feeling sort of isolated. So I needed something to sort of give me a boost. Momentum, they don't tell you exactly what happens going in so that you can be surprised and really experience it. But throughout that whole period from between February and through the leadership part of it in July, what I came to see in the people who are around me and in myself, and the people in this group are leaders, captains of industry, all kinds of fantastic people who are all there to grow. What I saw reflected in them was struggle asking for 2 things, love and support. And it was within that workshop that I realized just how much I struggled with asking for support. My whole life, really, it really made me look back to when I was a child and seeing my parents, who I speak about a lot on my podcast, incredibly generous people. But I've always seen them offer support to family, friends, community, etc., when the other person was in crisis. So usually, you know, if it was someone's having a drug problem or there's abuse or financial, whatever it is, and of course they're being loving and giving support, but as a young person, not fully understanding what that meant, what it meant in totality, not just, oh, they're helping someone because that person is struggling. That's what it means to ask for support. You're weak, you're suffering, you're in this sort of circumstance or situation you need help getting out of. So I think I carried that quote-unquote story, if you will, with me into adulthood, and then, you know, add on the layer of being a Black woman, wanting to be ambitious and top of my field and what I was doing in media and all these other reasons that we put up barriers for asking for support. So when I was in Momentum and experienced that, I began to say this phrase, okay, support is sexy, you know, seeing it as sexy, anything not sexual, to make the distinction. Sexy is anything that you want to be next to or experience. So whether that's a sexy vacation or you go into a sexy apartment or, you know, think of things as sexy, a sexy dress. You just love being in it, closer to it, near it. It's not something you shy away from. So I started saying it to myself as sort of a mantra to remind myself when I was getting in my own way and being afraid, really, to ask for support because of all the reasons that I mentioned. And when I started saying it to other women, Margo, I could see how they would light up, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to start saying, you know, they move different, their body posture changed and everything. So that's when I really started thinking, okay, maybe this could be something, not knowing, of course, if it could be a business at that time, but I knew it was resonating with people. And then that idea of, as I mentioned, I feel like I'm an ambitious woman. I know a lot of ambitious women who should be and can be unapologetically ambitious, but you still need support. Yeah. So that's where the idea of having it all doesn't mean doing it all alone came from.
Oh, I love that story, and it is so necessary because thinking back when you come from corporate, God forbid if you don't know something or if you have to ask, it's like you just cut somebody's leg off or something. So when we're moving, really, I mean, from where I come from, it's like you have all these volumes of books that because you're going to need this information later on down the road, and you better be able to get your hands on it. But for us as women to be able to come together and give ourselves permission to ask and to even share without being a threat. See, this is what, as you spoke, I could see the beauty of being in the same room. Everybody, different podcasters, different authors, all there with the understanding that there's enough for everybody, and let's support each other. And you know what, Elayne? When I listened to your show, I know you to be that kind of generous person who is out for all women to grow. And when one woman grows, we all grow. We all move. It's just thrilling to listen to your show. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It really, really is. So once you moved
Thank you so much.
You went. Oh, it's so true. You just spark life and this thing of passion, and when you speak, it's just full of passion, and it's riddled with wisdom. I want to ask
Thank you so much.
Oh, yes. Hey, I shouted from the mountaintop. I think it was in 2016 or 2017 that you started your Support is Sexy, the radio show. What year did you start up, and what made you say, I'm just going to go ahead and do it? I've been in media 20 years, but this is what I'm going to do next.
2016, July 4th, actually, is the day I launched, 2016. And the funny thing about that story is I have been working on it for a little while, you know, so once you decide to do a podcast, especially with me wanting to do it 5 days a week because I was looking for a point of distinction for myself as a woman and a woman entrepreneur entering the space. There are a lot of podcasts out there that feature entrepreneurs, a lot, you know, led by women, great podcasts that I listen to, and I'm sure you do too. But for me, it was sort of, well, what's going to be different aside from the message? and me about Support is Sexy. So my thing was I didn't see a lot of women doing shows only featuring women and doing it 5 days a week. So that was a lot of content to think about from the very beginning. So I've been doing some interviews of just fantastic women that I knew to start. And I remember having a conversation with my friend, Kevin Brown, and I mentioned to him, I've been doing these interviews and they're going really great. And I think at the time, maybe 5 out of the 7 women that I spoke to started crying during the interview. And not because I was mean to them or anything, Margo, just because they were so moved by a couple of the questions that I asked. And I was just thinking, wow, it's just amazing. I think I'm on to something here. I was really connecting with people. And I remember him saying, you got to put it out now. You have to do it now. And I was like, of course I was afraid, what do you mean I have to wait? Because in my mind, I was going to launch in September, which isn't that much further than July, but still it would have given me a lot more time. And he just encouraged me and said, no, you have to do it now. You have to do it now. So that's what really pushed me to go ahead and launch it July 4th when I was in the moment, and he really pushed me to say, you're onto something, do it now. I could have waited, but I feel good that I went ahead and did it. I didn't give myself any time for fear or talking myself out of it or anything like that. I went ahead and did it. And why I did podcasts is because I personally started listening to podcasts the year before. I was working on a freelance project at the time at Martha Stewart, where I used to work full-time before, but then they had another project I came back for. And I always say, I had to sit in the office and do something on the computer. It was editing, and I didn't want to listen to my Rihanna playlist over and over again, although I have a spectacular Rihanna playlist. But I didn't want to listen to that over and over again, so I started asking friends, well, what do you listen to? And many of them were saying podcasts. So that was in 2015. Many of them were saying podcasts. I asked them, okay, which ones? And that started me on that journey. Once you start listening to one and you like it, you just start looking for more and more of them, right? So that's what started me loving podcasts. But then I saw that there was a space there. Again, for me, I wanted to hear from women entrepreneurs. So on my favorite shows, which are mostly, a lot of them at the time, at least in the beginning, were hosted by men and mostly white men. And they did feature diverse women, but not as much as I wanted to hear from at the time. So that's when I began to start to think, well, maybe I could do a podcast. I was looking for what was going to be sort of my next move in media. I do love media. I didn't want to blog or just blog. I love writing, have always, but I didn't want to have to write every week. And I thought podcasting could be a good space for me to enter into. So all of that to say, that's why I thought about starting a podcast and why I launched when I did. So July 4th, 2016.
Wow. You have grown phenomenally in leaps and bounds, and I am so glad that you did. Because like I say, what you bring, you yourself, what I like about Support is Sexy is the fact that you have the bombest guests come on. I mean, and they just really, they really pour into your audience. But I really, really like the fact that there are days when it's just you and it's just the mic, and you yourself are pouring out into your audience. And one day, that's why I caught the Imposter Syndrome. I think you were getting ready to start a series, Why Are You Hiding? And so many of us do hide. Oh, we do it. Some of us do it consciously, unconsciously. But will you just kind of take us into why you decided to start that series out with how to get over the imposter syndrome? First of all, what is imposter syndrome? And why did you begin that series of hiding with that subject?
Yes, imposter syndrome, and my loose definition of it is when you think that, for example, if you're in a position of whether it's success or you're even just going after something that you think, well, why would I be the person to do this? Or I don't have the long list of things that you think you need to do that thing. Or you might already be doing that thing and think you're going to sort of be found out as a fraud or an imposter, if you will. Like you don't necessarily belong there. That success isn't really for you. We'd be surprised to find out how many quote-unquote celebrities or famous people or successful people have gone through this at different stages and go through it as you grow even when you think about making more money, or how can I be someone who has a six-figure business, or how can I be someone who's a millionaire. So that's what imposter syndrome is. It's sort of this negative self-talk that you're not worthy or capable of doing the thing that most time most times you're already doing. You just think you're going to get found out because you're a fraud or an imposter. And the reason that I thought to start the series with that is because I think when you talk about hiding, which was such a fun series and one that really resonated with people, fun just to share the truth about how we all hide in different ways. But I started with or made sure to mention imposter syndrome as part of that because I do think that's one of those things that we might not know is part of our roadblock. So, they always say you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes hearing someone talk about something, and with me, with my solo episodes that you mentioned in the series, I usually try to share something that I've just learned or gone through because I try to say I'm not necessarily an expert, certainly not an expert in business. I'm figuring it out, and I'm sharing it with all of you. This is what I learned. This is how I did this. This is the mistake I made. Imposter syndrome was one of those things, and it was me sharing my experience with it or other women that I've talked to and learning how do we recognize that in ourselves and then how do we move beyond it. Because if we can't get past that, that can stop us from doing anything. You'll forever hide if you don't think that you basically deserve the success that you want or that you are worthy of the success that you're even experiencing.
Yes. It will stop. It shuts you down completely.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. It'll stop you from asking for it'll stop you from asking for, to go back to what we talked about in the beginning, support. Because again, if you're afraid that you're going to be found out as a fraud or an imposter or someone who doesn't really belong in whatever space you're occupying at the time, that will make you more fearful about asking for support. And as I've done more and more research, even and working on a book for Support is Sexy and some other things, I've learned not only does it keep us small and hiding, not asking for support, but for a lot of us as women, it's making us sick. Women are committing more suicides than ever, which is, of course, very tragic. We're getting ill more than ever, heart disease and some other things that are usually triggered in addition to other health reasons, but by stress. And usually stress is caused by isolation or not having support. So there are a lot of other reasons that we don't think about beyond just, I need to ask for some help. You could literally be killing yourself or doing worse damage to yourself by not asking for support. So imposter syndrome can also play into that, especially if you're an entrepreneur or someone who's trying to do something different than the quote-unquote norm. You already sort of feel alone sometime on those journeys if you don't have support already there. So you definitely want to make sure that you get some support around that. That might look like a coach. That might look like a friend. That might look like just someone else who is an entrepreneur that is not a friend. Sometimes your friends don't get it. So you have to get support.
That's serious. When we think about how corporate America is always talking about breaking out of the silo, but when we go into business for ourselves, we go ahead and launch and we do what we're going to do, we often get into these silos, or as Cheryl Wood says, we don't get out of our zip code. So that takes me to something that you offer, and this is major. Since we don't have to do this alone, will you go ahead and tell us more about your mastermind? This is something that is awesome, and I want people to get a firm understanding about what you offer, how it operates, so that they can run and get in contact with you really soon.
Yes, a mastermind comes from the idea from the book from many, many years ago from Napoleon Hill that a lot of entrepreneurs cite, Think and Grow Rich. So you make sure you check that out for everyone listening. But the mastermind basically is a collaboration of people who come together around different themes or to support each other and moving ahead in whatever they're doing, helping hold each other accountable, support each other with resources, whatever's needed to help each other move ahead. So I belonged to a mastermind in, I think this was 2015 also, I think it was 2015. It was a big year for me of transformation and personal development. But being in the mastermind with a few other women, there were about 10 of us, and it really helped shift my business, but then also my mindset. It was really, again, another situation where I was pushing myself now to learn how to get support and to get around women who weren't just my friends or who weren't the women entrepreneurs I normally know. Sometimes you need to bring in some fresh ideas and those kinds of things. So my experience in being in a mastermind made me even more passionate about creating a space that was a mastermind for other women that I have as part of my community with Support is Sexy. But masterminds can be around anything, around certain jobs or certain other kind of things. Support is Sexy Mastermind is all about support. Now, we support women entrepreneurs, so it is on the premise of business, creating your business, growing your business, and I give resources for things like that. But really, if you notice in the group, the thing is to really encourage you to learn how to ask for and accept support. Because I feel like in anything you do, in your career, in your business, in your family, in your relationship, learning how to ask for and accept support is such a big part of it. So that is what the Support is Sexy Mastermind offers to women who are considering launching a business, have a desire, or who already have a business. And what I love about it is that we not only push you to ask for support, but there's also content there to support you. So as part of the membership, the paid membership, you get access to our wonderful Facebook group that has almost 400 women in it from all around the world who are, again, there to support you. You have to have that spirit of support. But we also have monthly workshops with women entrepreneurs who focus on different topics from growing your business, but also your personal development, because your business can only rise to the level of your personal development. So that's something a lot of us forget. So we have to make sure of that as well. So there's monthly workshops, and there's also other content like free resources, cheat sheets. I have some special episodes of the podcast in there. So it's about providing you with as much resources and things that you can use to support you, and then again creating that space for that. So people can find out more about it at supportissexymastermind.com. And we have a free offer right now where you can actually get the first month free. So I would tell everyone, you have nothing to lose. Go ahead, experiment, see how you like it, that kind of thing. You know, try it out. If you don't like it, you don't lose anything. I know you'll like it, but if you don't, you won't lose anything. But, you know, I just want to give as low barrier of entry as possible for women to really reach out and try to be in a space where support is the mandate. It's not about anything else. It's really about seeing you succeed, and not even just thinking, when I say support, I don't mean just for the challenges, because sometimes we think that, of course, there's that, but sometimes you need support for your triumphs too. You need people to be able to say, girl, you did that, that's great. You know, sometimes we keep ourselves small by not celebrating ourselves. So that's as important as sharing the challenges as well. So that's what that space is all about. So whether it's the Support is Sexy Mastermind or somewhere else, you could be a group of 3 friends that start a mastermind. As long as you're all about the same mission and moving forward in your own way, it can look a lot of different ways. The main thing is to get you in a space where you feel celebrated and supported.
That's powerful and so very necessary, so very necessary. You said something really interesting there about playing small, and it took me back to another episode that you just where you just poured out to the listeners and said it's number 197. Your playing small does not serve the world. That was powerful, profound word. So if a person, you have taken down all barriers, all fences, opened up the gate, they can come in and kick the tires and get the support for the good and the bad. Just being a woman in business, there is help there, so that having it all does not mean doing it all alone. There is one other entity that I did join your Facebook page on as far as podcasting goes, because, like I said, I love what you do, and I love the interaction with the other female podcasters on the site. Girl on Podcast on Facebook. Will you take a moment and tell us something about that and the service that you offer to all female podcasters on Girl on Podcast?
Yes, I'm super excited about that. Thank you for asking about it. You know, podcasting obviously is something we both love, right? And it's becoming more and more popular as millions and millions of people start listening more to podcasts and enjoy getting their information on the go. So during the holidays, just this past year, 2017 to 2018, I felt pulled and inspired really to start this service that supported, I say, women on both sides of the mic. So podcast hosts like you and myself to help give us resources and opportunities and just, again, a space for support to share anything that we need to with each other that we've learned about podcasting. But also on the other side, I am working really hard to help women entrepreneurs especially learn to use podcast guesting as a strategy to grow their business. You know, as I mentioned, podcasts are becoming more popular, but you don't necessarily have to start a podcast. I'm sure Margo can tell you it's a lot of work. I can tell you it's a lot of work. We don't shy away from a lot of work, but my thing is starting a podcast really what you want to do, or do you want to leverage the platform of podcasts? So I've really been introducing more and more women entrepreneurs and have some great clients that I'm already working with and helping them be guests on podcasts, because this way you get exposed to different audiences again and again. This way you can build your email list. You can share your expertise, because it's all about giving. Share your expertise, build your email list, connect with new audiences. So Girl on Podcast supports women on both sides. So the podcast host, who also should be guests on other shows. That's the thing. Just because if you do already have a podcast doesn't mean, just like I'm doing on Margo's show, that you shouldn't be a guest on other shows. So again, it's a great way to share your message in other spaces. But girlonpodcast.com, yes, has information for women on both sides to support you with growing your podcast, growing your business, and making sure that, again, we get out there, because the space is growing. And right now, I think a recent study showed that out of the top 100 podcasts, I think 87% were hosted by men. So there's an opportunity for women to share their voices in both ways. So I think definitely taking advantage of this space. Don't miss this opportunity. It's never too late, right? They say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. So start today. This is something you're interested in. Go for it. You know, find out. Actually, I have a free gift to offer if you have never been a podcast guest before and you want to find out more about it, on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest. Can I offer that to your audience?
Wow, yes, please, yes.
Okay, so it's at girlonpodcastgift.com. So girlonpodcastgift.com. A free download, 10 tips, how to be an unforgettable podcast guest who gets booked again and again. So there's information out there. I share information about podcasting, as I just did, why it's great for you to leverage the platform, ways that you can leverage it. But that's a way to get you started and just say, okay, maybe let me see if this is something that could be good for me. So I send you that guide and then some other emails that just shares more information with you about why you might want to consider podcast guesting for your business.
Wow. And to me, I think, you know what, Elayne, I think being a guest on a podcast is like video. You know, some people shy away from video, but it's inevitable. Everybody has to go there and be a part of that arena. And the way times are moving and communication is moving, everybody needs to get behind that mic. If you don't have a show, then you do have to be a guest. That's just the times that we're living in. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think as well, especially if you have an online business or you have a business where you want people to join you in some way online, even if you have a brick and mortar space, but you want to share information about your business. Podcasting, again, is a great way to do that, to tell people where you are and what you're up to. And, you know, it's, I would say, easier as a guest to be on a podcast than it is doing a lot of other things. You don't necessarily have to get done up if it's not a video podcast. If it's audio only, you can do it from anywhere as long as you have a quiet location. You can do it, of course, any time that works for you and for the host, so it's not like you have to be at a studio at a certain time in most cases. So there are a lot of reasons for women especially, I think, to give it a try. It's a lot more flexible. A lot of the women I work with tell me the times that they're available, and then my team and I work on getting them on podcasts that align with their brand and their message, but then also the times that work for them. And so you have control in some ways that you might not when you're doing some of the other platforms, which doesn't mean you shouldn't do those others, but certainly this is one that you can incorporate if you're growing your business.
It's one that you can control and work out. 300, you've done over 300 interviews, had over 300 conversations. Is there one thought that keeps coming up time and time again as far as a tip or a tidbit that your guests give to your audience that you'd like to give us? Or if not, is there something that, because I'm looking at the time, is there one final thought that you would like to impart to the audience concerning go after your dreams? There is help. There is power to help you move to that next level. Is there a thought that you want to leave us with concerning that movement?
Yes, I think sort of going back to getting over the fear and imposter syndrome and some of the things we talked about before, one of my, I don't say my favorite interview, they're all my favorites, but I will say one that I bring up again and again and that really stuck with me very early on is episode 26. So I'm up to episode 400 something now, so this tells you how long ago that was. So episode 26, an interview I did with a woman named Patricia Moreno, and she is the creator of the Intensati workout. Fantastic woman. I love that interview. So much great information from her in there and inspiration. But one of the things she said that really stuck with me and that really changed me and helped shape my business was that you have to be unafraid to live the question. And she talked about how so many of us basically search for answers, which we're prone to, and especially as entrepreneurs, because usually as an entrepreneur, you set something up to solve a problem. Your business is usually around solving some kind of problem, whether that's through a service or a product or whatever that is. So it's difficult for us a lot of times to remember to live the question. And what that means is we open to say, for example, okay, I want to start a podcast. I don't know how to do that. I'm not sure what that looks like. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to create. Telling people this is what I want to create. I could use some help in this space. Where do you think I should go? So being unafraid to live the question and knowing that it probably won't actually, but it certainly might not come. The answer might not come in the package that you think. But if you're living the question and in that space of being open to the universe, God, whatever you believe in, and knowing that I'm living this question, this is what I want to do, you'll be surprised, and I have experienced this, how often it'll show up in some way. But you have to be aware of it, otherwise you miss it. So she talked about she was wanting to do some, or figuring out exactly how she wanted to create her company and her workout, and she saw this sign for a yogi who was in town, and she ran to the church. So it's a great story. You have to listen to her tell it. But just it really moved me, this idea of you have to learn to live the question. We try to find the answer, and that's sometimes why we end up making choices that aren't necessarily the best for us or our business. Just be okay with creating some space. Whatever you want to do, live the question. The answer will come in some way. You'll see a flyer, a class, you'll hear a podcast episode about something. You'll find a tool that's perfect for something that you were trying to figure out months ago. Be unafraid to live the question.
Wow. Powerful stuff. See, that's the kind of meat that you bring to all of us. I so appreciate your time. I've spent 30 minutes here with Elayne Fluker, and she is the creator and the host of Support is Sexy. Elayne, tell us how we can tune in. You're on iTunes, Stitcher. How do we get in contact with and how do we tune in to your show, subscribe, and then how do we get in contact with you?
Yes, you can find all of it at supportissexy.com. That'll take you to the podcast. That'll take you to my website. You'll see all of the beautiful women there who I've interviewed so far. You'll also see a link at the top to join our mastermind. But again, that's at supportissexymastermind.com if you'd like to go straight there. And that's the best way to get in touch with me. I'm on social media at Elayne Fluker and at Support is Sexy. So very simple. But if you start at Support is Sexy, supportissexy.com, supportissexy.com, that'll take you where you need to go. But I'd love to hear from all of you. And Margo, thank you so much for creating this space for us to have this conversation. I think it's so important.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. To have it come from you, I take that as a high honor. And I feel this kinship because we are both lined up to help women, to empower women. I think you give a person the shirt off their back, and I know concerning reinvention, I would do the same thing. Just get here. Come on, you can do it. We're the rah-rah center for the universe for women and who want to make that quantum leap. So, well, tune in to Support is Sexy 5 days a week. And another good thing about podcasts is that when they go to iTunes, they can always tune in. It's on demand. That's what I love about podcasts. Terrestrial, once it's on, it's gone sometimes. But podcasts, you can always track that show down. You can track that episode down. So
that's right. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
Yes. And how important is it once they go over to iTunes? How important is it for them to leave a comment? Do they need to say something about the show?
Yes, leave a review. If an episode resonated with you or you're liking the show, I would love to hear your feedback. Leave a review. It definitely matters for me in hearing your feedback, and then just in the world of iTunes and all these other places, just to see what people are thinking about it. You know, think about when you go to purchase anything or listen to anything, you probably take a peek at the reviews to hear what people are saying. So if you love it, I would love for you to leave a review or a comment.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good. Wow. Well, we are wrapping up another, I told you, fabulous episode. And as always, I don't know, ever since January, it's just been hard for me to sign off from these conversations because I learned so much also from the awesome guests, the ladies who come on. But I will be back again next week, and thank you so much for listening. As I always say, you're going to have to listen more than one time because Elayne poured into you today. So when a person comes on and they take time to find you where you are, you want to sit down. First you want to listen, then you come back again. You come back with note paper and pad and take notes because this is your opportunity to grow. So I'm Margo Lovett. I'll be back again next week, and in the meantime, I have to say bye-bye. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation with Margo Lovett. Since you like what you heard, go over to herbusinesshervoice.com to get a copy of her book. Subscribe to the show and receive updates, free products, and offers. Be sure to let family, friends, and colleagues know about the show. Margo returns next week with a brand new dialogue on Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation.
Okay. VerKRadio.com, certified #1 digital talk radio station in the world. The power of women.